So when last we were discussing my recovery, I was sitting in a living room in a cloud of nicotine-stained smoke, staring into nowhere, going nowhere, and in a state of kind of profound despair and anguish. And so it's natural to wonder then, okay, what was the first step that I took in my recovery process? And that's an interesting story. I have a little Irish grandmother and a very wise old woman, and each and every day she would come into my smoke-filled room and she would say, "Patricia, would you like to go food shopping?" She'd say it exactly that way. "Patricia, would you like to go food shopping?" And I would say, "No." And she would say, "Okay," and she would leave me alone. And this occurred day after day after day after day. And then one day, for reasons that I truly, to this day, cannot account for, she came in, she said, "Patricia, would you like to go food shopping?" And I paused for a moment, and I said yes. And then I added the caveat that I would only push the cart, I wouldn't put a damn thing in it, right? That's because I tend to be stubborn. I said yes on that day. Why that day and not 4 months earlier? It would have saved me a whole lot of misery. And yet, for some reason on that day, I said yes to the invitation. And when I look back on that major turning point, it was the first active step I took in my recovery, the first active thing that I did in my recovery. And when I think about that, I say to myself, well, why that day? And I think in part that it becomes, that it's because recovery is in some ways a mystery. It has a mystery at the heart of it all. It's like the same mystery that we see each and every spring about rebirth, about newness. Why today and not a week from now? Why this month and not a year from now? Why do some people experience that turning point of beginning to get active earlier than others? I don't think that science will necessarily ever answer that question completely for us. What I do know is that from the outside, if you had seen me in those early days of my despair, feeling hopeless for my life, avoiding stress, taking meds as prescribed, stabilized, maintained, but doing nothing but avoiding stress, meaninglessness, that you would have seen what, historically has been called a classic chronic schizophrenic. I had gained an enormous amount of weight on the medications and the sedentary lifestyle. I had yellow nicotine-stained fingers. I had that blank stare. I was extremely somnolent, didn't speak much, didn't do anything. From the outside, anyone who looking in said, well, there's nobody home. She's so sick. She has such negative symptoms. She's just sitting here and not going anywhere, not doing anything. And this is a very critical moment, and I'm sure that many of us in our work have met people who challenge our ability to be hopeful and who we think, oh, this person is really unwell, really, really unwell, and who make us feel like, well, I'm not sure I can ever reach this person. How do I motivate this person? And the truth is we really can't motivate anybody, right? We can do what my grandmother said. We can invite people. We can welcome people to step over the threshold. It was as if each and every day my grandmother would come into my smoke-filled, monotonous reality. And she would open the door literally and let in some air. And she would say, "Patricia, would you like to go food shopping?" And what she was in fact doing is she was offering me an invitation, a welcome. She was saying, "Patricia, don't forget there's a world out here. Patricia, don't forget that there's a good world out here, that there's a world out here that can be for you, but I cannot carry you over that threshold into that life. It's you who will have to step through this threshold and do some food shopping," right? And what's important about her approach, I think, and why I was able to eventually respond to it, is because she never insisted. And she never came in 10 times a day. because that would have been nagging me and I would have just shut it right down, right? And really pushed it away. Instead, she came in once a day, but every day. And that was an act of her hope. She couldn't force me, right, to accept her invitation. That was her powerlessness. She did not have that power. And I think sometimes teams feel that we don't have the power to make somebody reach out for what might be good for them. Our power is that we can invite, and we can invite again. And as staff and as family and as friends, we can avoid the temptation of falling into despair saying, oh, this person is so unwell that they can't possibly be helped. That's hopelessness, and hopelessness can be contagious. Entire teams can get caught up in hopelessness regarding the person. My grandmother kept hope alive and demonstrated hope-filled engagement with me every single day by coming through that door, literally letting some fresh air in and inviting me. That was her power, to invite, welcoming me to cross the threshold into something new. There is a mystery at the heart of recovery, and I enjoy watching nature a lot to learn lessons in how, in the fullness of time, maybe not according to my watch, maybe not according to chronological time, but in the fullness of the life cycle, in the fullness of time, that our planet regenerates during spring and prepares in winters, and there's a time for all of these things. A term that I've been reading about recently is something called slow healing, that not all healing happens like this. Okay, we come out of the hospital after an episode of psychosis, we begin treatment planning process, we begin marching succinctly towards goal. That might be our agenda as the team, but it's not how sometimes healing works. Sometimes healing works slowly. A period of recuperation, a period of convalescence, a period of a kind of a deeper, slower healing. And that's okay, okay? That's okay too. So patience and approaching people with invitations and with the hope that there's a world out here. Come, join us, and let's be on our way.